Okay, that should just about do it. Hi guys, today I'm tying a Doc Spratley. It's a Canadian pattern. I'm going to show you how to tie it. It's very effective in lakes and streams. I've shown you the list of materials that we're using today, hopefully to make things easier for you, so when you're gathering materials you can just gather them all up and then you're ready to tie your fly. So the first thing we do is we lay our basic thread wrap. Next, wind your wire, and I'm using 0.015 15-aught wire. Pretty small stuff, but I want to keep my body small. I don't want to have a big gigantic body. Once I've tied my lead on, I'm going to go ahead and wrap that up with thread to cover up all of my lead. And I want to make sure that I cover all of that lead up, and when I'm done, I'll glue it. Now I go ahead and I glue my thread and my lead, and what this does is it creates a nice little bullet down in there that's all sealed, and this stuff will never come apart. Next we're going to tie in the tail. Now what a lot of guys would do is they would just take this feather here without stripping anything off, and they would just basically gather it up like this and lay it on there and tie it in. What happens is you end up with like a paddle or a flat spot there. So, and I try not to do that. So what I do is I snip the very tip of the feather off. I pull the feathers down like that so that only the tip is exposed. Snip it off. That way I have the tip snipped off. I can pull these back down, and now when I gather these up, there's not that tip part is not in there. You can see that it's gone, and about how much of it's gone. Anyway, I cut that out, and then I gather these things up in a tent kind of fashion so that the bottom of the feather is sandwiched together so you don't see it. So the feather actually just looks like, it looks the same all the way around, and that's how I get that. And then I just, with a little bit hanging out, I go ahead and tie that in right there. Next, tie in some oval silver tinsel. Next I'm going to tie in my body, and what I have here is I have Spirit River Nymph Blend, and I don't know if you can see that there. Anyway, it's made by Spirit River. By the way, Spirit River makes a bunch of different dubbings, and they're really cool because they have holes in the back here where you can just pull a little bit out as you need it. You don't actually have to open up the container and take the whole mess out and try to deal with it that way. You can actually just pull bits and pieces out of here, which also makes it really nice when you use your dubbing tool, which I am about to use for the charcoal dubbing. I've seen this fly tied with chenille. I've seen it tied with spooled wool. I've seen it tied a multitude of different ways on the body here, and you can do that. The general color here is black, and mine is more of a charcoal, but I'm hoping that when I get all this stuff laid down, it's going to be fairly black. It does have a little sparkle to it. I like that about it, and I think that's the thing about fly tying, is that you can really make it your own, and kind of, you know, if you want to try something maybe a little bit different than the pattern, then you know you're allowed to do that. So that's one of the things I like about fly tying. There's no exact definite rule of exactly what you have to use. You do have to follow it pretty closely, but anyway, so I'm using the black dubbing here, and I'm going to go ahead and spin some dubbing on here and build myself a body. When I build my body, I want to build a tapered shape. I don't want to build this up too fat here, but I do want to start out small and get bigger as we go. So the recipe on this also calls for fine oval tinsel. I'm not using that. I'm using medium, extra strong oval tinsel. The reason why I use that is because the fine is a little bit too small. I think it gets lost in the fly. It has no purpose if you can't really see it. So I'm using a little bit bigger oval tinsel on a, by the way, a number 10 hook, 4X long Daiichi, 1720 I believe. So I'm going to go ahead and spin some black dubbing on here, and then we're going to wind the tinsel over the dubbing after that. Next, I went ahead and dubbed my thread and made my dubbing loop, and then I'm going to attach my dubbing tool for spinning the dubbing. And I'm going to go ahead and spin my body up here on the thread. And once I get that all done, I'll go ahead and spin my body up. One important thing to note here, guys, when you're spinning your dubbing is, I've taken a lot of time. You spin it up initially and get that stuff tight in there and you get it locked in there. But the real key to making a good body that's even, that you can really work with really well, is to take the time here, and you can see how it's a little thicker here, a little thinner here, a little thicker here, a little thinner here. So what you do is you go to those points and you kind of spin them in a little bit and pull them back, pull them forward, try to spread that dubbing out so that you have a nice uniform, even body. Okay, once we remove the rest of our dubbing, tie that off, then we tie in the oval silver tinsel, and I usually always counterwind this onto the fly so that it crisscrosses what we've already tied in. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and when I do it, I'm also going to look at my tinsel. Sometimes the tinsel will spiral on you. You don't want to wrap tinsel on that. You want to make sure that you get your tinsel nice and flat. And to do that, you kind of see where it unwraps at, and then you start wrapping it from there. I'm going to go ahead and tie off the silver tinsel now. One thing I want to note about the silver tinsel is when you're tying this stuff off, and wrapping it around the body is, you can pull pretty hard on this stuff here and it's not really going to break. And so with the silver tinsel, you really want to kind of give it some pressure and sink it down into that dubbing there. So again, going back to why I don't have the fine tinsel, that's why. Because when you sink it down in there, you don't really see that oval silver tinsel anymore like you do here. And I like this fly to be a little bit more flashy, so I use the medium. And I really kind of, like I say, sink it down into the body right there. So I'm going to go ahead and tie this off. So when you tie this fly, you're going to want to bring your body up to about 2/3 of the way up the hook. But you're going to want to leave that last 1/3 for the rest of the stuff we're going to tie in here. I've selected my hackle that I want, my grizzly hackle that I want for the body here that I want to flow back. And I want to pick out some webby stuff. And where you find that webby stuff is on the back side of the patch, right in here at the top. There's some feathers that are really webby up in here, you can see, and those actually make the best wet fly feathers right up in there. You can see this is obviously the dry fly stuff here, but this is where your wet fly feathers come from, guys, right here. And you can actually pick the size of the barbules that you want. So that's where they come from. Now I'm going to go ahead and tie in my hackle here, and I want to make sure that the top side, the good side of the feather, is facing towards the front of the fly. So by doing that, I'm making the barbules flow back over the fly, because the barbules have a tendency to curve on the top of the feather downward. So that's why we tie it in that way. So I'm going to go ahead and tie in my hackle. Now, using the hackle pliers, I'll clip it onto the end of the fly, or I'll clip it onto the end of the feather, keeping the feather, the good side of the feather, to the front of the fly. I'm going to go ahead and wind it up. Next, after I tie it in and remove my hackle pliers, I'm going to go ahead and tie this thing off. Okay, once I have my hackle tied in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I've pushed some of it to the bottom, but the other stuff that just refuses to go to the bottom and wants to splay out to the top, I'm going to go ahead and cut that off. I'm going to cut it off flat, basically give it a little flat top haircut here, so that when I tie on my wing, it doesn't integrate with the wing, because I don't, on this fly, I don't want the hackle to integrate with the wing. I want it to be separate from the wing. So I'm going in and cutting right there, and you can see there's a flat top version of the fly. Next, I'm going to cut out a swath of the pheasant tail feather. And you might ask, well, how do I know how much to cut out of there? Well, here's a general rule. When I'm making a wing for these things, I'll generally cut out about 1 inch. And if it's too much, I'll just trim that stuff back, because it's better to tie in too much than too little. And you can trim that other big stuff out of there as long as you don't get too excessive with it. Anyway, the idea is to pull the feather straight out, just like that, nice and tight. That way, all your barbs line up perfectly, nice and even right there. And by the way, you're looking for this red part in the feather here. Not all of the pheasant tail has it, but most of it does right out on the end. These big long feathers here, they really have a lot of this iridescent red stuff out there. And on this fly, that is exactly what you're looking for, is that stuff right there. So that's where you get it. I'm going to go ahead and clip this off. I have it all lined up, and I'm going to go ahead and put it on my fly. Okay, I'm putting the finishing touches on the wing right now, just wrapping a couple of wraps to try to cover up that whole end right there. The wing, when I tie it in, it doesn't come back any farther than the end of the tail. It's important to note that. In fact, it stops just a little bit short of that. And the reason I don't have a big long tail sticking out is because those fish will come up and they'll hit this stuff and they'll short strike your fly. So you want to make sure that your materials are not hanging way out there like that. You want them up nice and tight to the fly, and you've got a nice big open point here with the gape of the hook. This fly is definitely going to catch some fish here. Now at this point here, you can see how the hackle doesn't commingle with the wing. I like that. It's not in the instructions anywhere, but I like that. I like the way the fly looks with just the hackle on the bottom and the wing on top. I showed you how to achieve that. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to tie in the peacock earl head, and then we're going to tie it off, and this fly will be done. Okay, so I've made my peacock earl chenille, and I'm going to go ahead and tie the head on this thing. Nice fat little head here I want, so that's the next step. I wound all my chenille up, and I'm ready to cut it. I'm always going to hold it straight up like I always tell you guys to, and just snip that right on the top. And finish it off. Finish it up. And a little glue. One thing that's nice about the Renzetti Traveler vise that I have here is being able to rotate that fly. I've mentioned that a couple of times. You can really see the underside of the fly. When it comes to stuff like this gluing here, it makes it a lot easier because you can turn that thing over and you can see all sides of that thread. And if you miss one little piece of that thread, you can get it. It just makes it really nice to be able to look at the underside of the fly. You can turn it all different directions and look at it. There it is. That is the Doc Spratley, guys. Go out and catch some fish with this thing. It is a proven fly. I used it up in Canada where it was originated by a guy named Dick Prankard. And it is a fly that works. The first time I saw it was up in Canada, and I've used it several times down here. It works really good. Simulates a leech pattern or maybe a black stone fly. Don't quite know which, but I know the fly works. Take it out and have a good time with it, guys, and thanks for watching my videos.